Hello and welcome. I'm Annette Reeder from thebiblicalnutritionist.com, and today I get to answer your questions. And the questions today are all about, is bread bad for you? Well, I just took this loaf of bread out of the freezer. This is my oatmeal bread. This has become a new favorite bread for us. So yes, I'm thawing it out. I make a lot, put it in the freezer, then I pull it out when I'm ready to serve it. So today's question, is bread bad for you? Now, at the end of today's video, I'm going to be giving away a gift, and it's going to go to one of you. So be sure to stay tuned to the end to see if you are a winner for today. Number 1, is it safe to eat unleavened bread even if you have celiac disease? Submitted by Nina. Well, unleavened bread is no different than regular bread except for the yeast factor. And yeast is not an element to be concerned with if you have celiac. So the question is, what is important is, what is the unleavened bread made from? And can it cause the problems that you're suffering from with celiac? So traditionally, unleavened bread was made quickly. And it was from the wheat variety that they had on hand. And I say quickly because it says that they made their bread quickly. When the dough is allowed to sit, the microbes in the air will ferment and the whole grains will create bubbles, which is a yeast-like effect. And this is what makes sourdough, which makes it so popular and delicious. Only sourdough that we make today can take 24 to 72 hours to get a good rise. Any dough left to the air is going to have a yeast effect. So unleavened bread is mixed and then baked quickly. If you go to Israel, you're going to see them making it over like an upside down dome. They make it, it's nice, light and fluffy. It's delicious. So we have to look at it though. What about the gluten? You can make unleavened bread with gluten, or you can make it without. And I have a video on how to make it without, with the gluten-free. So you could use tapioca, rice, millet to make a delicious flour. So when it comes to celiac, you can still enjoy communion and Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or just everyday life eating an unleavened bread made with gluten-free flours. So just enjoy it, enjoy your time with the Lord. But remember, if you're buying unleavened bread from the store, then you might have preservatives, you might have additives. When we mill our own grains, even gluten-free grains, we know it's additive-free. So we have that assurance. Chemicals that are used in the extraction process in these processed foods, they're not listed on the label. So be smart, mill your own grains, and it's best to have 1 mill set aside for gluten-free grains. Now, when we control the ingredients in our food, we have less health challenges, less preservatives, less additives. So this is important. I pray you do find a recipe to enjoy so you can have this time of communion and Passover and just enjoy this time with the Lord. Question number 2. In Bible times, did they use yeast to cause bread to rise, or was all bread sourdough? Submitted by Bobby. Well, the answer is both. Now here's the daily grind. After harvesting and threshing and winnowing of the grain, it would be stored. Then the women would take what they needed for a daily supply, and they would grind that amount. Now, this was done with a hand mill. So I can imagine that the women back then had strong backs and strong arms. So they would take this flour and they would mix it with water and with salt, and then they would knead it. Now, leavening consists of a piece of raw dough up to 3 weeks old in which the yeast had naturally developed. So yes, it was a sourdough mix like we know of today. Now, there's also record of using aged grape juice in the bread as a leavening agent. So the Jerusalem Talmud, it states that the daughters of Lot would knead their bread, and then they would ascend up to Jerusalem. They would go up there to pray. And then they would return. And in the space of time that it took, the bread would have risen. Well, this helps us to understand the story more of how the Israelites did not have time to let their bread rise when they were leaving Egypt, on that mass exodus for the Passover. So it helps us to understand how that works. Question number 3. Hi, Annette. Is cooking the bread in the oven enough to deal with the toxic lectins in beans, especially kidney beans, if they're not boiled for 10 minutes during the cooking? So this person says they have celiac and they make their own bread with the wheat-free oat flour, and then they add in brown rice flour, but would love to add more protein with the beans and the lentils. Thanks so much, she says. I love your channel. This was by Yvette. Okay, first let's look at lectins. Lectins are found primarily in legumes, grains, dairy products, and even nightshade vegetables. So that would include tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, and peppers. Now, get this. The theory says, and I do mean the word theory, it says, because that is what the hype is all about, basically is theory. Theory says lectins cause gas, inflammation, bloating, joint pain, and increased leaky gut. Anytime beans are not cooked properly, some people are going to experience these symptoms. That's true. Yet the research to date has not looked at how people actually consume a lectin-rich diet as part of their healthy plan, and they've lived many long years. A lot of these tribes that didn't have the processed foods of America, they lived well on these foods. So research shows that the health benefits of beans, peas, grains, dairy, and nightshades are actually very beneficial. Now, I am not jumping on this bandwagon. I will always stick to the 3 principles that I've taught you. Even in Matthew, Jesus and his disciples were eating green grains on the Sabbath. Look that up in Matthew 12:1. Well, according to several of the YouTube doctors, that would be a lectin that is extremely harmful. And then there are a lot of people groups that have been eating these foods for centuries with no harm. The harm came when people were introduced to processed foods. There are doctors out there on the internet, and they have very long infomercials, they have books, they have products, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I want to know, where is that doctor basing his teachings on? What is the foundation? What do they believe? And that determines the direction that they're going to go with their teaching. Now, this is kind of a long answer to your question. So yes, you can add beans that are cooked into your bread. I've looked at many different studies that show the time necessary for this, and it's just inconclusive. So what I want you to do is just go ahead and cook the beans until you're comfortable. Add maybe 1/4 of a cup, no more than that, to your dough until you get used to that flavor, because it will change the flavor. And then you can add more. But realize, always go back to the 3 principles. What is it a food God called food for us? And is it as close to the way he designed it? And then not letting food become an addiction. Now, I don't know anybody who's addicted to beans. But anyway, thanks for asking that question. Question number 4. I love bread, but it doesn't love me. It seems to give me acid reflux when I eat it. This is submitted by Sheila. Okay, Sheila, so what I would really want to know is, are you milling your own wheat, or are you eating bread from the store or a restaurant? Because those are totally different foods. Bread from the store or restaurant is going to have fillers, it's been stripped of all the nutrition, or at least most of it, and it has very little benefit to the body, and especially no benefit to the microbiome. So for some people who have high gluten in these breads, the gluten is going to act like glue in the digestive tract. And so for my clients, I always suggest avoiding all flour products for 6 months. Then start back with only bread from freshly milled grain that you grind yourself. This is going to help us know what the problem is. In most cases, we can heal the gut this way. And if not, then we can assume it's an enzyme deficiency that we have no way of breaking down the carbs in the bread. So for that instance, I would recommend a specific enzyme called carbozyme. So I'm going to add a link to this carbozyme down below so you can check that out. Now, it's offered through healthcare practitioners, so I will share my link with you as well. So these are all great questions, really good thinking on your part. Start all considerations with the 3 principles. Make that your foundation. If you're not familiar with those, number 1 is eat the foods God called good for us. Number 2, eat the foods as close to the way he designed it. And number 3, don't let any food become an addiction. Then from there, we decide, how has the food been changed? Now, I know all food has been altered. And the more a lab touches the design of our food, the more we suffer. Yet there will always be a medication to help if you want it. So, but never forget the Almighty Healer, God himself. He's our Rapha healer. I have a friend from Uganda, and since their medical establishment is not as easily accessible as we have here in the States and in some of the countries from those of you watching, they are 100% relying on God. And guess what the result is? They are seeing miracles happen on a daily basis. Now, I'm not allowed to say, don't go to your doctor. In America, those words are just not allowed. But I am saying, be smart about your health. Be intentional. Be in the Bible, reading it every day. Be intentional with your prayer time. God's going to give you the direction. He's going to tell you when to go to the doctor. He's going to tell you, hey, I can take care of this. So let's move on to today's winner. Today's winner of the Carbozyme, which I just mentioned, is Mace. Mace, you have 60 days from this video posting to claim your gift. So send an email to Annette@thebiblicalnutritionist.com, and in the subject line, it needs to say QA83. And then you can give us your information and we will get that out to you. Carbozyme, it just helps with the bloating, any health challenge you have with digesting carbs. It's just a really good product, and it's a great place to start. I'll add my link below if you want to try it for yourself. So great questions. I love the way you're thinking. I love the way you're looking for answers that are going to make a difference. So when you learn from anyone, even myself, see what is our foundation? What is the foundation of anyone you're learning from? If they're a doctor, are they sticking to just the facts, or do they have an underlying huge evolution theory that they're basing their teaching on? And one of those doctors is the first chapter of his book has these long paragraphs of his evolutionary process, how he got to the lectins being a toxin. You know, we have to read this. We have to read the introduction. We have to read the foundation before we put our belief 100% into someone we don't know. And so they could look great on TV, but where do they believe? Where are their beliefs focused? Any food can cause issues. Any food can cause harm. We need to look what's going on in your microbiome. What food sensitivities do you have? And now let's heal that. And I know God's going to bless you with these questions and these answers. So thanks for listening and thanks for watching. If you want your question answered, please go to our private Facebook group, Biblical Nutrition Academy, Biblical Nutrition Academy Facebook group. If you want to join our courses, go to biblicalnutritionacademy.com. That's where we have all of the courses to help you discover God's recipe for excellent health. And never forget the #1 ingredient. God loves you. He loves you with an amazing love. He's there waiting for you. He has his arms open to receive you just as you are. So you and him can have a personal relationship that is real and personal. Thanks for watching. Until next time.